Today in Lancashire, just over 23,000 people are out of work claiming job seekers allowance. This presents a lot of challenges not only to our business community but also to employees, potential employees, colleges, schools and universities all across the county. How do we tackle our own deficit? We met up with some of the people behind Lancashire's story to find out what they had to say. Right, well, hello and welcome to the latest Leaders' Lunch event hosted by the Lancashire Evening Post. Today we're here at recruitment agency Hayes, at their office in Preston City Centre. We'll be talking about a subject which we've entitled Tackling Our Own Deficit, looking at the issues with regards to unemployment and skills in the Lancashire area. We have an esteemed panel of guests here today who are going to take us through the debate. So just ask you all to introduce yourselves, starting from...
Fiona Riley from Conlon Construction.
Hi, I'm Jill Bealey and I'm from Preston Vocational Centre.
Liz Smith, I'm Principal and Chief Executive of Preston College.
I'm Adrian Roscoe from Lancashire Business Centre.
Jeff Taylor from Hayes.
And Tom Stables from Fremont Factory.
Okay, thank you very much. As you'll all be aware, I'm sure, of the issues with regards to employment and unemployment, with all kinds of statistics which are thrown at us every day about what the country looks like and what Lancashire looks like. But I'm aware in my job that statistics don't always tell the full picture of what we see. So, Jeff, I was wondering whether you might be able to sort of kick us off with the picture that you're seeing here in Lancashire. I mean, you speak to employers and employees. I mean, what do the statistics not tell us about what we're seeing here in Lancashire at the moment?
Well, I think it's very easy to read into all of the negative stories that you see in the press and media, because I don't know whether we're exactly a microcosm of what's going on in the general population out there, but we're actually finding it really positive in Lancashire. So much so that I've invested in a nice new office and recruited another 7 or 8 people over the course of the last 12 months. And I was mentioning to one of my peers around the table earlier on that one of our biggest investment areas is construction and property in Lancashire, focusing in Lancashire. It's fantastic, even better than the boom years of 2007 and 2008. So for me, I just question our focus as business leaders on whether we focus too much on the negative and not drive the positive. Because again, for me, I'm really enthused about the market at the moment. I think it's only going to get stronger and only going to get better. But I counter that and I temper that a little bit with maybe I'm a bit anaesthetised to what we've all just been through for the last 4 or 5 years. I don't know. So positive for me.
Yeah. You mentioned construction there. Is that one of the main areas that you're seeing things coming through? Are there any other parts of the industry where you're seeing improvements as far as
the first question, construction, yes, it is. It's a big area, and we've developed and expanded our construction business now to focus on the likes of Wigan, which we didn't do ever before. So yeah, construction it's a buoyant market for us. The other areas which we focus on in Lancashire, which are growing significantly, are our education business. Not just traditional school education, but our further education business here is really starting to grow. Our accountancy business, probably you could argue, went through a tricky patch over a period of years, but the accountancy business now and financing itself is quite positive as well. So we're seeing a broad spectrum of business come back now.
And construction, Fiona, obviously something you deal with every day. I mean, that sounds like a story that you're hearing on a sort of day-to-day
Yes, we
basis.
are, which is very positive at the moment. And especially we're having a lot of inquiries from the younger sector, 18 to 24-year-olds are very keen to get into construction through an apprenticeship scheme.
Which way do they tend to come in? Is it traditionally through apprenticeships, or is that a changing picture as well?
An apprentice will come to us and for so many weeks and have experience of maybe joinery on site, and then we'll go to one of our subcontractors and gain experience on something that we wouldn't traditionally do in-house, for instance shop fitting or plumbing.
Those kind of skills, and then they'll go somewhere else to another,
another
construction
yeah.
company. I mean, apprenticeships is obviously something that I know yourselves and Runshore are very involved in. I mean, is that a familiar story about companies sharing apprenticeships? A new one on me.
Yeah, I think it's really sensible and it's really good to hear that approach. I think the apprenticeship kind of scheme, excellent way, but for some companies, the thought of taking on, it's a huge commitment. And one of the things we've been looking that, and is about how we can support companies to actually take that on, but make sure the apprentice gets the best experience, and that often does mean actually sharing, as it were, maybe spending 6 months in one company, 6 months in another company, and distributing them. So the student themselves, the apprenticeship, is getting the best experience ever. It's fulfilling the whole framework to make sure they cover everything. And ultimately then the companies have got an opportunity to really have a good look-see, I think, and potentially recruiting that. I think the end game has always got to be for the companies at some stage that they're going to employ that person, so we shouldn't take away that. But it's a really good way of doing that. So there's mechanisms now. One, we set up what's called an ATA, which really is a company that allows us to almost employ an apprentice for a company and then do exactly that. And particularly for very small businesses, that's a really good way. So it's trying to give flexibility for companies where perhaps the apprenticeship scheme isn't as flexible. And it's trying to make sense of that, so we're not downgrading what an apprenticeship has to offer. That's absolutely right. It should be now 12 months, 18 months. We're not into short term, and yet recognising that it's a huge investment for a company who might only feel they can cover some of that experience. So it's working well. Yeah, it's working well, and the more and more I think that companies actually do that and work with the training providers together and share that, we will just get a much better and wider experience, I think, across the piece.
But is there an availability with other industries other than construction for these apprentices?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly kind of media and very small, as I say, where they used to being almost self-employed and very small companies with real expertise, but could, as I say, could only maybe offer part of the framework. And so that's where we see it really helping. Construction is one, maybe kind of sports coaching and all of that kind of area as well. So it's really taken off in the sense of, it seems that companies will sign up to that more than taking on board an apprentice and then worrying, particularly if maybe for many companies, if they reach a place where they have to make people redundant. Obviously with an apprentice you can't make that person redundant necessarily, and yet you're having to make other people redundant and everything that brings. This is a way of ensuring that apprentice gets their full training, we don't lose out on having that time, and yet the company then can is comfortable about how it deals with its other problems and other issues. So I think it's a mechanism by which will be positive. Some downside, we've got to make sure it's not abused like anything. I think the potential for that might be, we should make sure that this isn't about ensuring that ultimately, as I say, that apprentice is about training them to potentially have a job in that company. We shouldn't lose sight of that, but I think it's a flexible mechanism to help companies out.
We've been very lucky. We've had 5 apprentices. 2 of them came originally from the Preston Vocational Centre, and the feedback has been fantastic from them all of the experience they've gained whilst they've been with us. And each one of the 5 have gone on to work with other subcontractors in the area and have got another maybe 3 or 4 weeks experience after that. And two of our apprentices were working at the Foster building at UPlan University and also Royal Preston Hospital recently.
I think initiatives like that are fantastic, because without doubt we've got a problem with youth unemployment here, and apprenticeships are one way which we can encourage young people into work and get them started on their careers. The issues are with some of the employers perhaps and getting them engaged in the apprenticeship programme. But if you look at stakeholders, you've involved Calico Housing, housing organisation, yourselves from the repairs and construction side. Looking at building a partnership approach to it is a fantastic way of sharing the burden of that responsibility really, and really engaging with the apprenticeship programme.
Speaking with small businesses about apprenticeship, one thing that I found which surprised me was that a lot of them think that it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of expense to them, and in a lot of cases when you speak to somebody like Preston College or Runshaw, it's not that expensive, and there's a lot of help out there, isn't it? It's doing that message out.
There's lots and lots of help for any employers wishing to take on an apprentice, and we spend an awful amount of time providing advice and guidance, not just to young people but to employers, to ensure that they can take on an apprentice, and they can be successful in the business. So, I don't think people should feel it's a lot of paperwork. A lot of help is given. Shortlisting, recruiting initially. Ensuring that the ongoing support and guidance to ensure that individual settles well into their employment, and particularly for the younger ones, where it's their first experience of work. I think that's pretty vital. I was talking to a number of parents at an open evening I went to the other day, and it's surprising how many parents, their children haven't actually worked. Paperboy, Saturday job,
Yeah.
they haven't ever worked. So to start work at 16, it's a first experience of ever going to work and things being asked of them, other than in the home or with family. So that's quite a challenge, quite a change, and that is some of the support that goes on an ongoing basis.
Just to go on from that, we've got, as Fiona said, young people who have gone on to do apprenticeships with Conlon and other providers. And there's one guy, and he rings our centre manager every week to tell him how wonderful it is. And what that's doing to our 230 odd students or learners that are coming through each week is really motivating them. They can see now that by going a vocational route, they can move forward, they can maybe break a cycle of unemployment. And it's just wonderful to see how these young people develop as they come through Preston Vocational Centre, learning a practical skill, maybe only coming in at foundation learning level, which is reasonably basic, but working their way up then to go on to Preston College or to an apprenticeship to get further levels. So I'm really pleased as well that the construction industry is so buoyant, because, again, that means that hopefully in the Preston area we can keep breaking cycles of long-term unemployment by just offering a comprehensive education to young people.
We have that view, don't we, in society, I suppose, that for years children went to school, they went to college, they went to university, and then obviously the opportunities that are out there are far beyond that, aren't they?
Yeah, and we start taking them at one scheme with Preston United has been working with 13, 14-year-olds who don't traditionally do vocational work, and they've all got a level 1. 19 of them got a level 1 at the end of it, and they would otherwise maybe have been kicking their heels a little bit of an evening. They did it in their free time. So I think it's all really positive.
I wish we could can that. Sorry.
No,
I wish we could can that enthusiasm and motivation that these young guys have, and let them go into schools and show other people they may not be academically.
But I think you're right. It starts a lot earlier than 16 when
It
they leave
does.
the school gates, and unfortunately we've lost the funding for what used to be Project Trident, but it was work placements for individuals. Schools now are very much focused on academic achievement, league tables, at the and leaving behind some of the work-ready skills, preparing people for later life. And I think that's a failing, really, and that's something we need to address. It does start earlier. If you look at unemployment, you look at disadvantaged families, you can already identify perhaps who's going to be neat when they start secondary school, or the potential to be neat.
I think that kind of is absolutely, you were saying about the advice and guidance, we're getting in there really quick, early, and your example about people haven't worked, and some of our learners are they haven't actually got the role models in their own families, have they? No. And so actually, in terms of the expectation of working and seeing people who work, that isn't there. And what we're finding is that, I'm sure everybody's finding, that some of this is about trying to even understand turning up at 9 o'clock. And actually at 5 o'clock and being asked to do things and all of those kind of things we would take for absolute granted, and yet are having to be introduced and learnt, and also I think some kind of aspiration and ambition as well. So for some of our learners who come, perhaps they haven't done as well at school, things aren't going particularly well at home or whatever, and they've no sense of what can be achieved or ambition or anything. So,
but have absolutely bags of potential.
Absolutely.
Fantastic potential, and just untapping that potential and giving them a bit of guidance, and maybe not expecting them to follow the normal pathway. Actually they will perhaps go a very different route, but will be so, you know, they will really achieve, but in very different ways. And how do we support them in order to do that?
I think the job ready skills are one thing that we've tried to address, and I'm sure others have, in terms of just providing a short programme to give them some guidance, even about how to present themselves at interview, fill an application form in, because if they don't get past step one, they'll never get an interview, will they? And you know, putting their CV together, I'm sure, Hayes, you support people in terms of doing that.
Absolutely.
But that's fundamental. But some people haven't got that skill at the moment. They're not able to put that first piece of the jigsaw down, and they can't build upon it. So that's one thing we've been doing. And I have to say, at the moment, we're looking at support that's provided. That's currently, a lot of that work is unfunded. You know, the colleges and training providers are providing that, but it's not being paid for through any grant that the colleges receive. I should disagree with me.
Absolutely. I mean, that is, you know, all of that funding disappears, and yet there is an expectation that it will be provided. And even if we didn't want to, actually it's so necessary, because it's fundamental actually in getting people into employment and helping them along the journey. And it's that underpinning, isn't it? And it goes along with that really good advice and guidance, but getting into the schools really early doors as well, and working and showing and working again with employers, isn't it? I think it's more and more, it's not just one kind of group of people or one sector can try, and it's actually as a collective, isn't it? So it is employers, it's colleges, it's schools, and recognising this, how we can work more together, really, to really, I think, I was just hearing about one particular student that we have who had not done particularly well in previous school, whatever, and he's come to us, and we've managed to turn him around, and we've got a partnership with the BBC. He's just gone off, and he's actually come away from this kind of a few days he's been spending with them with offers of 5 jobs.
Wow.
Now that is
Fantastic.
just unbelievable, isn't it? And you know, that's why I go to work. I mean, what a fabulous thing. And we, you know, potentially it's about changing lives.
It is.
And you know, it's been an awful lot of time and effort on everybody's part. But to think that, you know, fundamentally, and the impact that he has then on his own family and everything. So it's not just actually about him, is it? It's that impact he brings. You know, I just thought it was a fabulous story.
Yeah, fantastic.
It was.
Uplifting.
Made my day today.
Absolutely. I imagine what's been spoken about there about employers, the frustration they must have when they see a young person come to them and they don't have the right looking CV, and they don't have this, that and the other, because as an employer you expect these things to be there, don't you? And you can almost cast aside someone who may have lots and lots of potential but just doesn't have the way to present it. I mean, is that a frustration for employers that you work with?
I suspect it is a frustration. But as Adrian said, the guys aren't getting to a stage where they're actually getting in front of an employer because of their lack of work-ready skills. I think one of the biggest issues I see, particularly in people the other side of the market, is they don't recognise their own attributes and skills. And it's very easy to get a little bit of work with someone and focus their transferable skills and make them realise that, you know what, I've actually got quite good time management actually, and there's a really good skill for me to base my interview on, or my application on. So I think the nurturing and trying to get people's unrecognised or untapped skills out is absolutely fundamental, particularly for people who are entering the job market, 16 to 18-year-olds.
Tom, we talk here about different ways of getting into the workplace. I mean, you're one of a growing number of people who's sort of gone out there and done it for themselves and set up your own business.
And I'm not sure whether that was because of ambition or drive, or whether it's because the mechanisms in place. I went to the University of Central Lancashire, and the whole process, up until 3rd year, I wanted to go there, get my degree. I knew what I wanted to do. And in the 3rd year we had a module, it was an enterprise module. We had to set up a company as part of the Young Enterprise Graduate Scheme. And for 2.5 years I hadn't spoken to anybody. I just wanted my degree, didn't want to drink, didn't want to meet friends, just wanted my degree. And in some bright spot I thought I should be the PR person. And because I was so driven and focused on getting my degree, I thought, well, I've got to speak to people. I'll have to start networking, I'll have to start asking. And actually what it did, it was a light bulb. I was like, this isn't too bad actually. Started to quite enjoy it. And the company we created with this safety net of Young Enterprise was a web development company. So we had real experience of clients. It was all very safe, but at the same time it didn't feel very dangerous either, just to carry on doing this after that stopped. And because of the facilities around us, we had the media factory and we had the 4th floor an incubation facility there. It wasn't daunting. So I didn't drift into it, I just carried on doing it. And it didn't seem so momentous at the time. But when I look back and reflect, it's been very difficult, or it's involved a lot of hard work. But I think when you enjoy what you do, and when you've got a passion for what you do, it doesn't really feel like hard work.
As you said, there's a lot of young people who probably go to university and follow exactly the same route you were. They go, they get the degree, and then they go. But I think at UCLan they're starting to try and foster that.
Yeah, there's certainly got a focus on employability and real world placements. What has surprised me actually, and it's in the last 18 months we've had a lot of young people, not just from UCLan, from Blackburn College, individuals from Blackburn, Burnley, from around, asking for work experience or some kind of placement, and we do our best to facilitate that. And it really is informal, but what we want to do, we always want to try and make sure that we get as much out of it and make sure that they get something out of it. So it's what we don't want is for young people to come and us to micromanage them for 2-3 weeks, or how long the placement is. We make sure that there's a live project, a real client, something you can do, something they can benefit from. But we're doing it ad hoc. We're not doing it with. I know there are apprenticeship schemes, and I know there's, and I'm not sure that's because we've not been educated well enough, or I'm not sure whether it's an outreach thing. I don't know. But we have a steady stream of people working with us.
It's very much in the news now, isn't it? Throw a bit of a bomb in there, but you talk about this idea of people being forced to take on work placements to get those skills, and I know that's something which divides opinion, whoever it is you're talking to. But by the sounds of it, this is something that you're doing, perhaps without even realising you're doing it.
Possibly, yeah. We see it as an opportunity. When you get an email, first of all, and I think we're like a lot of people do, we have our own way of vetting people. So we'll first of all get the CV or the portfolio, then we'll look deeper, we'll look at the Facebook, we'll Google them, and see if they've got a LinkedIn, and look at the digital footprint. And this is really, I don't know, it's either exciting or it's unnerving to see how active people are online. And some students, some young people are really conscientious, they're very careful, the privacy's locked down, so we can't see the mischief they're getting up to, but we can see all the wonderful things they're doing, these achievements and awards, and sometimes it's not so great, but so when we go through a process unwittingly of doing, I don't know, it's unusual. But maybe we are helping.
I think it's encouraging, Tom, that you're actually taking people on placements and actually offering that opportunity. I think lots of people out there who just haven't got an opportunity, and they just need an opportunity. They need a leg up. They need a chance for somebody to take them on, let them shine, get a bit of confidence, and maybe they won't find a job with you. They'll find a job with somebody else.
And perhaps it's
the confidence thing.
Because I have been in
successful job search.
I have been unemployed at various points in my life career. Not sure which word it is. And it was always either you're too young, or you don't have the qualifications, or you don't have the experience. It was always when they were in this vicious circle. So whenever I get an email from somebody, I just think they've gotten off their backside and they've bothered to email. They've motivated themselves. We're not looking for financial recompense. They just want this experience, this elusive experience, and to me, that's enough to want to help them. I think it's really encouraging that young people are actually proactive enough to want to do that.
A lot of people who do say that's a bad thing, that people seem to be almost like driven into this idea of having to work, and there's this issue with the government at the moment forcing people into placement so that they can get their benefits and things like that. But those kind of experiences, to me anyway, seem to be exactly what people need, isn't it? That life skill.
Moral responsibility here. Those who are in work have got a moral responsibility, and those who are running businesses, to help those who currently find themselves out of work through perhaps no fault of their own, and to give opportunities and to provide opportunities. But I think Liz's team at Preston and ours at Runshaw, we are looking to engage with employers to ensure that they're providing good quality opportunities, and these create long-term sustainable jobs, and not just a quick placement here and then you're back where you came from and there's no benefit. But I think we do have a duty. I feel that deeply, that we have a responsibility to do something about this and do all we can.
Maybe in the school holidays, for instance, companies could take on people with work experience for a couple of weeks rather than a couple of days, or 4 days I think it is, isn't it, when they're 14 or 15, and do placements once a year to give them a bit more confidence in the workplace.
I think the issue is in part of the press is around the internships or work experience, where people haven't perhaps got forms of income, and then they're going into companies and working, isn't it? And you were saying, but it's a balance, isn't it? And you know, life actually isn't fair in that sense. And some of it is about, if you're serious about this, you know, you do kind of get off your backside and try and get that work experience and everything, as you say, then providing the opportunities. I think the difficulty comes when people aren't supported into doing that, and then financially they get into dire straits and everything that goes with that. And it is, I suppose, the question though, who ultimately pays? You know, there's a very limited pot of money, isn't it? So I think that's part of the debate, is more about, and then people themselves feel it's kind of enforced and slave labour, and you get into all of those debates. But if you're a person who's wanting to develop, and you know, I suppose it comes back to the work ethic, isn't it, and what's expected, and that, you know, and a bit of passion and a strive. Well, you do these things because actually you want to get on and do it, and that's fine if you've got financial backing.
Aside from the young people, we've got people who, you know, have been made redundant, and you know their traditional industry is not there anymore, so they need to retrain. But what's holding them back? No experience in that. So come out of engineering and decide you want to go into catering. Well, where's my experience? I need some experience within a catering setting. We're running a small project with South Ribble Borough Partnership at the moment to provide placements with supportive organisations. So, and they're paying the travel expenses of the individuals to go on placement. And it might be a day, 2 days a week over 5 or 6 weeks, but it is a start to give them an experience of employment, which hopefully over a period of time will move them on and get them into secure employment.
Is that something businesses are engaged with you in?
Yeah, we've engaged with a number of businesses in South Ribble, many of whom have offered, you know, to have a rolling placement. So they'll make that placement available over a period of time. You know, one person comes in and undertakes it, moves on, and another comes in. So we're hoping that will help in a small way, perhaps, but it will help.
Do you feel the mood music around employers wanting to engage is getting better? Is it worse? Is it the same? Or?
Personally, I think, you know, whilst there's a lot of issues with the public sector and tightening of purse strings, and we've lost a lot of jobs within the public sector, the private sector, particularly small businesses like Tom's size and maybe a bit bigger, are seeking to take people on. You know, they are riding the storm of the recession, and they're starting to expand, maybe in a small way, and maybe not to replace all of the jobs currently in the public sector that were lost, but that is starting.
Right.
And maybe you feel that as well for organisations that use your services.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a feeling I get on the ground.
I think one of the things, and Tom, a really good example, isn't it, where actually setting up your own business or self-employment is a real option. And I think, again, perhaps some of the kind of more traditional conditioning is that you go on to either a large employer or a smaller employer. Well, actually, again, in about transferable skills, have you thought about either being self-employed or setting up your own business and trying to make it less scary, perhaps?
Yes.
You know, and actually breeding the new kind of entrepreneurs. You know, Lancashire have got, you know, some tremendous entrepreneurs, but actually really generating that whole notion of enterprise and entrepreneurship.
I don't know if there's anything for younger people, but it's something similar to Dragon's Den. Everybody watches, all the youngsters seem to watch the X Factor and this sort of thing. I think they can get rich quick by just being famous. But I think if there was something similar to the Dragon's Den for younger people, that might also entice people into thinking about themselves.
I mean, it was a couple of years ago now, but I was invited over to Sri Lanka for the Global Enterprise Week. I was with UCLan as part of this delegation, and we were looking at the idea of entrepreneurship in education, and in Sri Lanka they're looking at from primary school onwards, looking at ways of developing enterprise, and not just and I didn't realise it existed intrapreneurship. It was new to me at the time, but you know, enterprising mindset within a bigger organisation and having that not an entire freedom, but being allowed to have ideas and run with them. Because I think that really, for me, running a business, it's more about what I'm able to do than the money I can make. It's more the fact that if I get a really good, bad, silly, stupid idea, I can give it a try. I can
Yes.
think it through, I can try it, I can see if it flies. Sometimes doesn't, but I've tried. So it's great just being able to have those ideas late at night and then in the morning having a team meeting suggesting this. And we have other micro projects, we have other businesses that are warming up, and we've always got something new. So we've got the core business and other ideas in the core offering, but we're always developing and testing new things. And for me, that's really what that spurs me to be self-employed. It was never really about what's not available out there. As I say, it was for me, it was a steady progression from, I just went into it.
Was it at university that was the first time you were sort of exposed or supported with this idea of enterprise?
Yeah, it would have been. And it was, I say, it wasn't until the year 3 that I'd never even played with the idea. It didn't cross my mind at all. I just thought, design or web development, I'll find a company and get a job, easy peasy. But it just didn't happen that way. And I don't think I ever sat down and looked at, okay, job market, what's it like, what can I do, it's terrible. Occasionally I do look to see what's out there, so it's mainly competitor analysis, see what they're doing and how they're going, but it's unusual. I never really looked at the job market or the lack of, and that wasn't a drive for me. It was more about what I was able. It was more of a positive thing. It was what I could do, potential, I suppose.
Tom, I'm intrigued. How are you used as a role model then internally within your success? Are you used
Yes,
as
they
marketing PR internally within the unit?
Yeah.
I see Tom at all kinds of events.
Time everywhere, attention. They do use me, and it's because I've gone through various strands of UCLan. I studied there. Yeah. After studying there, I worked there on the eLearn platform. After that, I did my MA there. I did, and I lecture there occasionally. Right. And as through my factory, we outsource various bits and bobs, design work, social media strategies. Yeah. So there's a lot of UCLan in me.
Do you have anything to do with the UCLan venture scheme that was in the Evening Post yesterday?
Oh, which one is this?
UCLan Ventures.
It's about supporting not just graduates but using the expertise within UCLan through the professors and everything else they're doing to create spin-out companies through the student body, but also through the professors.
Should check my inbox when I get back.
Right, okay.
Maybe there's something there. I mean, one thing there is the thing about university. I think an organisation of any size is communication between departments. It can be quite difficult. And there are so many opportunities within UCLan that a lot of UCLan don't know. It sounds really silly. For example, they have the Unite scheme, which most employers when I go networking have never heard of. And the Unite scheme is an opportunity to have a student paid full-time, 4 weeks, so a recompense of about £980 to work in that organisation, as long as they fit the criteria. And the employers, there's no risk to the employers, just time. And nearly all people I talked about this have no idea that they can have a graduate or undergraduate working with them. No idea.
We've had one recently working under that scheme, and again we didn't know about it.
And there's also the UCLan Advantage, which is there now that the fees have been implemented. One of the offerings, one of the things to the USPs of UCLan is that they can, if requested, the university will offer a placement to any student. When you consider there's 34,000 students on campus in Preston, it's a big promise.
Yes.
So UCLan are having to be very, very proactive now and engage in the local sector. But Unite, this other aren't anything to do with you. It's really weird, quite siloed. But I don't think that's UCLan. I think that's just huge organisations. And it's really frustrating from the outside in to think, well, if I can just use you, if you meet him and you can help me together, this would be wonderful. And we do that quite a lot. We deliberately network between departments.
It seems to be something the university's trying to channel a lot more.
Absolutely. It
takes a while to get those wheels in motion, I suppose. Yeah,
and they have a lot of work to do, but they are proactive now, I think, in engaging with local business, small and large.
Yeah. But I think it's going back to making sure that it's how the connections work as well, and the progression through, isn't it? So that colleges, the school, we get it right to the schools, the progression, there's that aspiration, the colleges, the university, and particularly working with the businesses and the companies. And you're absolutely right. There's a tendency to potentially look at this in silos and develop and initiate really good ideas, but actually thinking about how do we crack this so that we are working much more together and you can share those ideas and the networks that come from that and building on each other's skills. So ultimately we are doing that, and that's where we've got to get to, because you look at the figures and none of us are going to crack this on our own. And yet it's a big problem, unemployment, particularly youth unemployment, and kind of skills deficit. It's something that impacts right across the piece, isn't it? For Lancashire, we see that. So I think there's some fabulous things that happen, but it's then how we take that and work very early doors with schools, but that whole progression through, isn't it? And we haven't cracked it yet.
And it's not just young. We've got an issue with graduate unemployment as well. So it's across the piece. The need is for jobs and quality jobs that people can move into. Hence why the university and Liz and myself are looking at placement types of things, different ways in which we can deliver apprenticeships. The need is to try and create those opportunities for people of 16 to 24 to move into some.
It seems there is a desire, Jeff, from people to employ, from employers to employ across certain sectors. I'm sure there's some that aren't, but it's not a lack of opportunity.
It's not a lack of opportunity at all. It's a real struggle. It's a real skill at the moment trying to recruit. There's a fallacy on the market that there's pots and pots of fantastic people sat around just waiting to go. It's as hard as it ever has been to get people onto the market and get them to get into a new job.
So there's a mismatch then between the skills that we have, whether they're young people coming through, redundant people, or those who want just to move on, and the sort of jobs available.
I think, in certain circumstances, yes, there is. Yeah, there is a mismatch. It's particularly prevalent when you see the younger people trying to enter into the construction and the built environment type industries. People want someone to go and mend their gas boiler who's got 15 to 20 years worth of experience and a bit of grey hair. There's not quite as many people entering at the bottom level to go through, so maybe there is a skills gap, yes.
How much of it, though, I think is as well is the mismatch because of the skills gap, or what you were saying before about maybe the expectations and the expectations of people themselves and how they present then. Those actually, how do you present and your transferable skills, and if you recognise you've got transferable skills, how do you present yourself and your expectations about getting a job to employers as well, because some of the kind of things we find are an employer does expect a particular perhaps thing to happen and people are the way they act, and again sometimes that can be a mismatch, and we've got to try and again build that gap, haven't
Absolutely.
we? Some of it might be people have got those skills but they just don't present themselves, and employers are almost looking for the holy grail. As you say, you want the person that comes on to be that experienced person, to really know what they want to do, and yet perhaps their course or their provision won't have taught them that yet.
Exactly.
And how do we get that balance right?
I think there is. You're right. The expectation is the issue. Employers, their expectation, and the expectation of people moving into employment. You see that a lot with the apprenticeships. The apprentices perhaps expect more, and the employers expect more, and there is that imbalance, and that's something that you have to work hard to iron out, because anyone employing someone who's been long-term unemployed or is moving into work for the first time, they're going to have to deal with that as an employer. They're going to have to be supportive and provide support for that individual as they start to find their feet. So I think that's a challenge that we have within the sector, particularly with apprentices.
Do you think, from your perspective, your 16 to 21-year-old employment market, do you find that their outlook is still as mine possibly was back in the 80s, a bit traditionalist, that they expect to jump into a job which is going to be for life, or do you believe that their work readiness is prompted a little bit more about how flexible working patterns are now?
I'm not sure people think perhaps about work in the sense of long term. I don't think people necessarily think about long term.
Right.
I think more about it's what's at that moment in time,
right,
and what they fancy and how they go, and particularly the kind of whole social media and how they communicate is just so different now. It's fascinating to hear kind of Tom talk, because I don't think we even know, to be honest. We can't, because they just operate in a very different way, and their expectations are different, and that doesn't make it wrong. It's just different to what we probably have experienced.
And it is. I mentioned earlier about online reputation and how we present ourselves online, but there's another aspect to it, in so much as the traditional way was advertising a position, whether it was paper or a post or in the window or a job centre with a card. Now it's an inverse. People can actively seek opportunities and not just looking at jobs boards. So, for example, using Twitter, you can, if you listen to the right words, the word vacancy and the word Preston, you can have a search. You can be notified. So in a 10-mile radius, just someone's talking about that, you can find it straight away. And what I encourage students to do particularly is start networking early. It was one of the things that was this horrible thing, which in real life, face-to-face networking can be often awkward and uncomfortable. Social networking, it's easier to be social there. And it's all like, people buy from people or people buy into people. So students, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter or Facebook, engaging with local employees, decision makers, people who eventually might be able to provide them with an opportunity, whether it's a placement, an internship, an apprenticeship, whatever it is. I think it's key that people now, they're doing this early. So when they come to leave school, college, university, they've already got this network of people who can help.
You hit on a good point there, Tom, and the use of social media for a range of activities in terms of job searching, keeping in touch with friends and family, etc. As and the young people are extremely skilled. The downside of that is I think they've lost some of their social skills.
Absolutely agree.
And that's the issue that a lot of employers who maybe of a different generation, that sounds awful, doesn't it? But they're a different generation, are expecting, and they expect a please and thank you, some courtesy, deference, whilst in employment. That with some traditional employers is still a serious expectation that might not be true within certain new businesses who might, excuse me, cool and trendy. But in the organisation I work in, and I'm sure in yours, Fiona, it's a requirement, isn't it? It's something that perhaps when we look at the skills that young people have, that's the missing bit that they have.
Yes.
And it's hard to teach that, because they don't see themselves as having a gap.
And they might not see it at home either.
Yeah.
But
And that's Liz's point about role models, isn't it?
It is,
Yes.
yeah.
Do you look online and things like that when you're looking to recruit somebody, or is it still the traditional CV through the post?
Still the traditional way, or we may use an agency or specialist press.
And is that the way for most companies in your industry as well, or?
Previously, I worked for a Japanese company, and they always would recruit online through social media. Found that very successful as well. That was a huge company.
I suppose also with the rise in, we're providing more and more services, aren't we? We're not making things, and most employment now has some kind of service delivery aspect to it, and that's where the social skills are, and that's where the need perhaps is. I noticed in your stats that you gave us, it's about customer service driven jobs. You look at any person who's got someone on the front desk, they want them to look and behave in the right manner, because they're representing their organisation, and some people need some serious help in terms of getting them ready to.
Yes.
Just answering the phone, for instance.
To do that, yes.
You don't just pick up the phone and say, yeah. Which amazingly some of these young people seem to do.
But on the other side is that they have such wonderful IT skills, and they've got other skills which are also highly valued.
Yeah.
It's trying to get the both of them together.
Sheila, I'm sure a lot of people that come to you through the Preston Vocational Centre, I mean, are a lot of them younger people?
We take them from 14 upwards predominantly, so schools send learners to us who maybe the mainstream school isn't providing that sort of learning for them. And what happens at the centre is that maybe because they've been placed in a box, whether they're 14, 16 or whatever age, they've been predominantly placed in a box where maybe they're not seen to be achieving. And therefore they've low self-esteem, they've low confidence, maybe they don't have those social skills and their ability to develop relationships. If we've got in the centre the teaching staff become role models, then they've all had their own businesses, they're a male role model mostly, and maybe some of our young lads don't necessarily have that male role model. So we actually see ourselves not just as providing basic construction skills, but really helping these young people move their lives forward. And I'd like to think that many of them, when they do come out, have seen their own potential, have grown in confidence, and can move on either to further education or to an apprenticeship. And we'll keep working with them to help round them. But yeah, some of them have faced real challenges, and it's how
They just
we
need somebody to give them a chance.
They need somebody to believe in them.
Yeah.
And we had one young lad came through, and he was a really brilliant brickwork. He'd never touched a brick before. He'd done this fantastic arch. Nobody had done one like it for a little while. And we asked his school to come down and have a look, and they said, well, it can't have been him, you must have done it. But they wouldn't actually come and see, because they didn't believe in that young person. They'd been put in that box, and that makes me so cross. So it's how do we maybe work with our employers better to give them the skills that they need? How can we put
There's no quick
more
fix,
energy? There is
and
no
that's
quick fix.
Where
No.
I think employers sometimes need to be aware of that they need to nurture talent
Yeah,
and not expect it to be
there.
immediate.
And that's why I think, just going back to what we were saying earlier about the apprenticeships, and in particular maybe elements of a supply chain working with an apprentice and giving them different experience and putting them into different environments, it kind of takes everybody a little bit out of their comfort zone. But that apprentice, I've no doubt, will be a really good employee for somebody in the future, and the risk isn't all with one company. And I would also think that in terms of wanting innovative young people, the more they've had that experience, the braver they will be in transferring knowledge from one company to another, so that supply chains can become ever stronger.
We've just, we've just a couple of minutes left now, so I was wondering if we could just finish by just going around the table as we started. And obviously we've had a debate about some of the things that we believe are challenges out there. We've called this event Tackling Our Own Deficit, obviously looking at the 23,000 people in Lancashire who are currently out of work. I wondered if you could all just mention something that you think could be done to try and tackle that deficit, to try and to bring down those kind of figures. And Tom, could I start with you?
Can I say no as an answer? I've no. What can we do to?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a question. Well, I think because I can only come with ideas based on my experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And where I'm currently. I don't know. I think it was a bit of a long answer, but while people were talking, I was thinking about the issue for me, or the issue for me, was to have the ambition, the drive. I needed to know what I wanted to do, and that for me didn't happen for years and years.
No.
I went through lots of different types of jobs, so and I don't know what careers classes are like at schools these days. I have no idea. When I was at school, it was what do you want to do? Oh,
Classes.
this,
Yes,
right? And here's what you need to do that, and that was that. So I don't know if somehow we can foster or encourage focus on what is it? I don't know. I think when you know what you want to do, that drives you. And often, and you can't hate me saying so, sometimes university and further education, it isn't the way forwards. £27,000 now for a degree seems an awful lot of money to get a foot in the door in the sector you want to go into. And if that were me, I'd look into more creative ways, social media ways, look into ways of being seen rather than looking for jobs that exist.
Maybe it's not a case of having that traditional school.
Yeah.
And thinking outside of those boxes.
It's a rubbish answer, isn't it?
No?
It's very good.
I mean, there's an example. For example, there was a guy called Johnny Rose. This was on Twitter, and I was reading an article linked somewhere. I went to this article about Facebook, and the guy who wrote it, Johnny Rose, didn't have a job on his website, and I saw a little tab just saying, "Give me a job." So I clicked it, wondering what this was about. Clicked on there. There's YouTube videos of him singing a song about why you should employ him, and really tongue-in-cheek, stupid. So I tweeted, "This is brilliant. Saw the CV. This is an amazing way." Hashtagged it. Give Johnny Rose a job, and it kind of went slightly micro-viral. And over the course of I think 50 tweets, it landed in front of 22,000 people. Within 2 weeks, I landed a job at one of London's top social media agencies. just because of an idea, someone identified it. He's made this opportunity. It was great. I know that can't happen to everybody, and it was maybe a unique process, but just the idea that he, very self-driven, and he created the opportunity. It wasn't there, he created it. And it fascinates me that social media now, we're at a point, we're at a tipping point where it is all its opportunity, and knowing where those lie and how to key into it is vital.
Jeff, follow that.
Impossible to follow that. But mine's more of a plea to really seek excuses to drive business confidence at any opportunity. I think far too often our mantra is all wrong, and we look for the negative, and why are we looking at youth unemployment? You've got fantastic stuff like this going on. It's absolutely superb. So mine's more of a plea to drive as much confidence out there, and as business leaders, I think the onus is on us to continue to do that and speak positively about all of the good stuff that is going on in the market, and keep driving this fantastic Lancashire business environment we've got, and keep driving it forward.
I think at least for business leaders to get involved in the debate, to actually get engaged with the fact that we've got 20,000 people unemployed within Lancashire. At best, look seriously at apprenticeships. Look at where you can actually make a difference and actually take somebody off that unemployment register and give them a start. We've 7,000 people who were aged 18 to 24 on that list from the stats we've got. Give someone an opportunity. I know from the experience we've had, they will make a difference to their businesses. If we have as close to full employment in Lancashire, it's got to benefit us all, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
I think, very much around the table, that the traditional progression routes, the traditional pathways, no longer stand, in the sense of it's about creating and nurturing that talent, isn't it, and finding other ways and people. Something is about expectation management, and colleges, universities have a real role to play in that with our young people and adults, but also employers need to understand that. But I think one of the biggest things is about talking to each other, isn't it, and about engaging in that, and so that it's about providing opportunities both from the supply side and from the employer side, and really that driving that enterprise and entrepreneurial spirit, and nurturing all of that. So but like let's be positive about this. There are a lot of positive stories that we've even heard today. Let's not do ourselves down. I think being new actually to Preston and to Lancashire, one of the things I've found, and having come from Manchester, actually there's some fabulous things happening, but you hear about the negative things, and whereas you go to Manchester and you think they were fabulous, and yet, so how can we make those positive stories? Because actually that comes with that, then people's confidence and driving that up. So
self-fulfilling, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yep.
And maybe we need to get better at twittering our good news
Yes,
stories.
absolutely.
Yeah, Tom can tell you how.
Yeah, well, I think that's what we need. I'd agree with everything that everybody has said, and I just think on top of that, because I come from a vocational centre where we are working with a lot of young people who've, as I said, had their challenges. It's not to demonise young people, but to see the potential in them and to work with them so that they can make a difference to anybody's business. And that way, hopefully, we'll break cycles, we'll get more people into work, we'll create more robust communities, and all that brings. So,
thanks very much. Last but by no means least, Fiona. I know I've left you at the end and everybody said everything.
I agree with everything that everybody said, and I would think education at a young age, maybe employers going into schools and colleges and telling how it is from their point of view. We've got several apprentices that are now site managers at Conlon Construction that have been with us for years, and they've gone up through the ranks. Training. Get them in there, get them young, educate them right from the beginning to cultivate that motivation for later on, and let them see there is something at the end of the tunnel.
absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, it just remains for me to say thank you to all of you for coming along and joining the debate, and hopefully some of the positive stories that we've spoken about here will be translated through anything that we do with this article and video as well.